Okay, hello, hi, all those Marxist-Leninists out there, and today I'm going to try and translate a lecture by the Workers' Academy Fund and the Red University called Scientific Socialism and Contemporary Debates about Socialism. Red University, Alexander Sergeyevich Kazyonnov, and his patronym is Sergeyevich, so his father's name was Sergey. That's how things are here in Russia. If you respect someone, you don't tell him sir or mister, you say you use the patronymic. So it's Alexander Sergeyevich Kazyonnov, because he's a an elderly person and we respect him. Two reasons. So he's not young. He's much older than me, and he's a doctor, a professor, a very respected guy. So we don't say Mister here in Russia. That's how we express respect, by mentioning the patronymic. So yeah, a very respected person, Alexander Kazyonnov, by us at least. And us, I mean those who actually, read Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and try to find out what scientific socialism is, as opposed to, scientific communism that was introduced by Khrushchev, who lied. You can read Grover Fair about that. He lied basically everything about Stalin, and his main lie as a revisionist was that communism, full communism that is, so his highest stage is already here. He lied about that in the end of in the early 60s. That's his biggest lie. Ooh, thunder, cool. It's raining here. Anyways, so let's get to it. So scientific socialism and modern, debates about socialism. Proletarians of all countries, unite. Red University. Okay, so our today's lecture is about scientific socialism and debates on modern debates on socialism. So Descartes in 17th century, already in 17th century, and he called upon to a clear definition of concepts. So to define concepts clearly, or make concepts, distinct. Not like those in Wikipedia, right? Sometimes. So, but a clear definition of a concept is a term. And even more often they argue about exactly when you have to understand very clearly what is a word, what is a word, what is a term, and what is a concept. So difference between these. And you have noticed, and they are of different depth. So like word, and then comes the term, and then the concept. And so we pay lots of attention to that, and crucial significance. We always talk about a concept, about concepts, a concept or concepts. But not just about separate concepts. Even commonplace sense or everyday awareness, everyday consciousness can get to the individual, separate individual concepts. For instance, grandmas know what value is, what price is, what God is, what conscience is, what conscience is, and all other stuff, right? And scientists, especially starting young scientists, they not always understand that concepts scientifically. And for example, Aristotle, he sort of felt that problem. And Hegel, in his History of Philosophy, reminds us that Aristotle, almost every new category, every new concept in his works starts from discussing the word, looking at a word and discussing it. In what sense do we use the word? Like, say, for example, a word. So, for example, the word gens, right, and as in the one that's derived from Latin. That's in local languages. You say kin, we say rod. English-speaking speakers say kin, right? So we say rod, and that's the word he mentions, the professor mentions. But the idea is that it is derived from the Latin word kin, gens, right? Genes, genealogy, generation, all that stuff is derived from that word. Genealogical, genital, general, probably too. Gender. So the professor explains that there's this general understanding, like kinship, so your relatives, and in the biological way, like in biology, genus, right, of fish, for example. Yeah, so in nature, right, biological dictionary, genus, or botanical dictionary, genus, genus, right. So it has different meanings, like about 6 meanings of the word there are there. It's raining really hard, I better pause. Sorry about that. So
Здесь речь идет о смысле слов. В каких смыслах упоминает?
So again, we're speaking about the meaning of the words.
Другое свое произведение категории.
What are the meanings of them?
Он начинает с обсуждения.
And his other way of explaining a category, Hegel starts with discussing what difficulties are there when you use the words, and starts explaining that homonyms are referred to as what do homonyms mean for this word, right? Synonyms. What synonyms are. In order to later there would be, during the process of discussion, there would be no ambiguity and dissimilarity, different understanding for different people. So, what do you mean when you say, in Russian it's zamok, it means lock, right? The professor gives an example of Russian homonyms, right? Words that look the same and maybe pronounce a little different pronounced a little different, but mean different things. The most important.
Когда еще говорят, тут ударение.
So it can mean either castle or lock in Russian. Different stress, right? Like zamok and zamok, a lock in the first case, and then castle in the other.
Играет роль, когда написано замок, замок.
But it is when it's written word, you cannot make any distinction, really, right? What do they mean? There's no stress. Right?
Так что
So,
этот вопрос, он не праздный.
This isn't just an idle question, right?
Он обсуждал.
Serious. It's been discussed
В учебниках
by
логики,
our scientists of logic, and in the textbooks of logic. Usually,
правильно обсуждается так или иначе.
it is discussed. It is also discussed this way or another.
Вопрос.
This issue.
Поэтому и в
So,
спорах вот
in
часто
arguments,
начинают
in debates,
и потом
they often start
догадываются,
arguing and
что
then
один употребляет слово социализм,
and then understand that one person uses the word socialism
в одном смысле,
in one sense,
в другом
and the other guy uses it in the other sense, other person.
другое какое-то слово. Один употребляет так, другой употребляет. Поэтому смысл слова, он очень
The
важен.
meaning of the word is
Ну и,
very
скажем,
important,
у
right?
социализма уже
Let's say
накопилось много таких смыслов.
We've got
Все, я думаю,
lots of meanings, different meanings for the word socialism. I think
так что не имеет смысла перечислять. Ну, например,
we shouldn't list all of them here, but for example,
социализм,
socialism
общественный строй в СССР. Был
is
социализм,
a social system in USSR, right?
да. Или социализм.
Or socialism,
Это социальное учение
social teaching,
Маркса, марксизма,
Marxism, and Marxism and communism. Scientific teaching, that is, of course, not a dogma.
Социализм, мировоззрение,
Socialism, a worldview, right?
социализм,
Socialism,
утопия,
a utopia,
иллюзорное знание об обществе, о развитии.
illusory knowledge about society, about the development of society,
И так далее.
And so
Можно
on.
много, во многих смыслах
in many different ways, many different meanings.
их используют слово
The
социализм.
word socialism is used.
И,
And
значит, развитое ухо и развитое сознание,
if you have
оно
a developed ear, a developed consciousness, mind,
ну, реагирует
it
на
reacts
то, правильно ли используется в данном
if in
контексте,
this context the word is used correctly,
в контексте данного спора слово
in context of given argument. Whether it's used correctly.
Значит,
It's used correctly.
это не какое-то
And it's
там
not just some
такое схоластическое
scholastic
обращение внимания, да, или схоластическая проблема.
approach or scholastic problem. Scholastic meaning, you know, when everything is sort of for the sake of argument, it's like a connection with religion, of religion with sort of dogmatic theological stuff, with rational stuff. So it's, you know, dogmatic basically stuff.
На этой проблеме можно сказать,
This problem,
развели
we
все
can
и
say,
партию КПСС,
was used to divide the CPSU party, right?
и
The CPSU,
Советское
Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet society,
общество, и советский
to divide it.
социалистический народ.
and the socialist Soviet socialist people were divided using this problem.
Мы строим коммунизм.
So they said, for instance, we're building communism.
Мы же социализм. Это первая фаза
But
коммунизма.
socialism is the first stage of communism.
Первая фаза коммунизма.
First
это
phase of
тоже
communism
коммунизм.
is also communism.
Поэтому как-то мы строим
So,
коммунизм. Мы
how can we be building communism.
вниз построили.
We have already built it. We have already built
И
communism.
постепенно
And
от такого слова употребления
gradually, from using this word, from this word usage,
происходит сознание то, что
you get an understanding that such a realization, such a perception that
оно отделяется от другого.
one thing is separate from the other. So socialism is separate from communism.
Вырастает некоторая пропасть. Потом
So a certain gap is created, and then
где-то остается там сзади. Он остается сталинским.
socialism remains, becomes this Stalinist thing, right? Quote unquote Stalinist thing.
Потом его
And then
пашут, значит, там
it is
репрессии
smeared
фальшивые, выдумывают там или
in you know, repressions and all the false accusations of millions of repressed, killed, millions of victims, and
миллионы жертв выдумали,
millions of
а вот
victims
отпора среди
were imagined, or it's thought up,
научных,
but
скажем,
there
интеллигентов
was no real opposition to it, or fighting back among the let's say scientific intelligentsia.
Интеллигенция это прекрасно знает, что не было
Intelligentsia knows very well that there were no millions of victims during Stalin's rule.
миллионов расстрелянных не было.
There were no millions shot.
Даже одного миллиона не
Even 1 million shot, there wasn't.
было расстрелянных.
There hadn't been.
Тем не менее, какого-то большого протеста, даже небольшого,
But
не было.
there was no protest whatsoever, even a little one.
То есть вот простая разводка.
So that's a simple lie, fake out, right? Zigzag.
Причем она была теперь, я понимаю, это вот
And now I
вот эти вот
understand
исследования
that it was. Now I understand these
привели к выводу, да, что это разводка.
this research have made me draw a conclusion that it was this faked out zigzag,
Сознательная.
a conscious one. So this was done on purpose. Right?
Работала целая группа
A
серьезных.
whole group of very serious people worked on that,
И в статьях я об этом говорю.
and in my articles I wrote about this.
Поэтому и вас
So,
я призываю, что вот смыслом слова,
I
тем
urge
более,
you to do the same.
если возникает спор,
When an argument appears,
нужно относиться серьезно.
and in general, you should treat the sense of the word of a word very seriously,
И четко чувствовать.
and
как он
clearly understand
использует
in
свой
what
язык
sense
слова.
should we use this or another the given word.
Ну и здесь же полезно
And here it would be a good
происхождение
thing to do
слова
is to talk about etymology of the word.
от латинского
Socialism is derived from the
Само это
Latin
латинское слово общество.
word. The Latin word means society, right?
Оно происходит от соцер.
And the word itself, Latin word itself, society, is derived from the socer.
Это латинское слово общество. Да? Оно происходит от соцер.
Socer.
Это старшие родители.
Elderly, the parents,
Теща с
like a mother-in-law,
теща с тещей, да?
for
Свекр
instance,
со свекровью. Вот, то есть из родового,
and daughter-in-law.
из родового понимания человека, из родового
So from the genitive, from the generic or family genetical understanding of
понимания общества.
society.
Вот доросло до социус, общества. Точно
Socies.
так же, как и коммунизм,
That's what it, grew out of.
скажем, коммунизм.
Just like communism.
Слово
Communis means in Latin
А оно уходит еще в греческое «коме».
this general thing, generally societal, right? So everyone's, basically. Communist means belonging to everyone or everyone's something. And it is derived from the Latin word
Вообще, оно уходит еще в греческое
to the
кома.
Greek kome. So it's derived from the Greek kome, Greek
Кома
word.
не через ё, кома, а через
It's written in a particular way.
омегу.
Omega, a word, Greek word.
Кома,
So kome,
то есть деревня, община.
it means a village or a community. In English, it's better reflected because, you know,
Отсюда и
because you're all either Catholics or Protestants in you know, in your basis. I mean, more or less all English speakers came out of that religious tradition, and Russians came out of Orthodox Christian tradition, which is predominantly Greek, right?
коммунист. И
So
это слово коммуниста, оно сейчас
this word коммуниста
коммунно.
and
Оно
коммуна,
используется
it
в
is
Европе
used in
сколько
Europe.
хотите.
Everywhere.
Знаешь,
Commune. Right?
Палата общин.
There's a-
Common.
Common House of Commons, right? For instance.
Теперь, значит, эти вот
And
районные коммуны,
Regional communes.
региональные
Regional
коммуны во
communes
Франции,
in
они
France.
так и называются
They're
коммуны
still called that.
до сих пор. И
And
эти названия, они
these
не
names,
родились даже в
they weren't
1871 году.
Even born in
Они
1871,
родились во
they
время
were
Французской
born
революции.
during the French
И
Revolution.
вообще-то говоря, скажем,
And
много исследований
generally
было в
speaking,
советское
there
время
was a
о
lot
так
of research
называемых
in Soviet
средневековых
times
коммунах.
about the so-called
Средневековые
Middle Age
коммуны
communes.
Это, значит, образование в
It's,
средневековых городах-государствах.
When in
Когда что-нибудь-
Middle Age city-states,
город, то
there was this certain there were these entities in Middle Age city-states,
государство, как и в Греции, скажем,
just like in Greece, in
Афина
Athens.
это город-государство.
Like Athens was a city-state.
Полис. Полный
Polis.
город переводится и государство.
It's translated both city and state.
Так и в средние века.
And in the
И
Middle
там
Ages.
были сложные
And
такие
there were
войны между
there were
коммунами.
complex wars between these entities, between the communes.
Отдельно это большая тема.
That's a
Кто
separate
хочет
topic to
почитать в
discuss.
библиотеке, найдете.
You can find it in the
Диссертации
libraries.
писали там и так
Dissertations were written on that subject,
далее, и так далее.
and so on.
Но
But
мы ведем речь,
today
конечно,
we're
о
speaking, of
коммуне вот
course,
в этом
about
строгом
commune in the
смысле.
strict sense
Если
of the
коммуна,
word.
то речь идет о
So if we're speaking about
социальной
commune,
коммуне,
we're speaking about social commune, of course. Commune.
об общности имущества.
About we're speaking about community of goods, right?
Поэтому и термин
So the term itself,
социализм,
socialism,
он тоже
It's
имеет
also-
много
also
определений.
has
Причем тоже
many different definitions.
появилось за историю много всяких
Because
социализмов.
throughout history there were many different socialisms.
Ну, мы знаем
There had
хорошо
been.
утопический
We
социализм.
know utopian socialism very well.
И вот пришли на
What it is.
лекцию научный
And now you have come to this lecture, which is called scientific socialism.
социализм. А социализмов ВОЗ и маленькая тележка.
There's like a bunch of socialisms.
Все слышали
Everyone
демократический
heard about a thing called democratic socialism.
Все слышали
Everyone knows about
социализм с человеческим лицом.
the so-called socialism with human face, something popularized in Khrushchev's and in late Soviet Union
Гуманный
by the
социализм.
party, by the revisionist party, or humane socialism, right?
Вот сейчас новый социализм.
And now we have something called new socialism.
И вся
That's one of the a guy the guy's name's Platoshkin, who tries to popularize that new quote unquote socialism, pseudoscientific stuff.
это определение есть отрицательный социализм.
Any definition is a negation of socialism.
Спиноза говорит, да?
Spinoza says that every definition is a negation. Every definition is a negation, both in essence and in this in form. This superficially, superficially. What does it mean, socialism with a human face? What does it mean at all? Which face does communism have then? Asks the listener. So a person who listens to that, he immediately thinks, well, of course, at first there was this horrible Stalin's repressive socialism, and now comrades want to build, a humane, the proper one, with a human face, socialism with a human face. Of course, that's all that is a struggle is against the real socialism, the genuine socialism, with scientific socialism.
Вот сейчас я снова вернулся к произведениям Яковлева.
I'm speaking again about. I'm reading again Yakovlev works. Yakovlev is the KGB traitor, the revisionist traitor who participated in the fall of the Soviet Union in the 70s and 80s. He once was the head of KGB. So Alexander Yakovlev. This guy here, you can see him on the screen. So Alexander Nikolaevich Yakovlev. And I realized that we should unmask him. Expose him more. I mean, his work with this, his work has this big, is very deep, or has a very big ground, like a sand bed, deeper inside.
С большим дном. Он за социал-демократизм, за
So he stands for social democratism, social democracy. He says, he writes,
значит, за
for
социализм с демократическим лицом.
Socialism, the so-called socialism with democratic face.
И это не просто разговоры.
These are not just
самое, что ни на
talking.
есть,
This isn't just talking, but very deep anti-socialist policy. That's what it is in actuality.
Михаил Михайлович,
Actually,
Михаил Сергеевич Горбачев
Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev lived
в студенческой комнате
a student's room
с чехословацким студентом,
with a student from Czechoslovakia who was the leader of the student organization of Czechoslovakia
чешской студенческой организации в Москве,
in Moscow,
товарищем Млынаржем,
Comrade Mlynarczyk, who was the son of a member of the Central Committee of Czechoslovakia Communist Party. So, one of the son of the elite.
Типа наших вот этих орлов, приехал,
So he, just like our modern he-men, heads. Oh, wait, no, not heads, he-men. Like, headmen.
Словакия,
He came to Czechoslovakia,
демократический социализм,
democratic socialism.
демократический,
We proclaim
значит, социализм с человеческим
with a human
лицом,
face.
книжку написал,
He wrote a book,
заморозка социализма
The Freezing of Socialism
в Чехословакии.
in Czechoslovakia. We should freeze socialism in Czechoslovakia.
Но тут его, конечно,
And of
Раз ты
course,
такой удалец, раз ты дошел до таких глубин понимания
he's so good. He
социализма,
came to
еще
the bottom of things, to the bottom of understanding what socialism is,
создаешь что-то новое,
something
ну давай
new.
мы тебя будем подвигать.
So let's, give you the bump you up, help you get higher in the hierarchy to the top.
И в скорости он становится членом
And very soon he
комитета.
becomes a member of the Central Committee of
Вскоре
Czechoslovakia. And very soon,
возникает событие 68
or of USSR. He didn't say. Of Czechoslovakia, yes. And very soon the events of the 8th
года. Одним из возникает событие 68 года.
of the 1968 events. 1968 events occur, and one of the
Лидеров
leaders
Прага
of
перевели
Prague Spring, so-called Prague Spring in Prague,
так, которая под этими лозунгами и шла. И Дубчик он так.
this thing was led under these slogans,
Такой же.
above-mentioned slogans.
Дубчик это лидер был.
And there was one of the leaders was Dubček, Czechoslovakian leader
Словацкий компакт.
of the Czechoslovakian
Сделали
Communist
переворот.
Party. So they made a revolt, basically.
Пока подавили, придушили.
And at first they were repressed
Через несколько лет.
successfully,
Значит, опять
but in several years, again,
делать
they started doing the same thing,
перевороты.
revolts.
Сделали. К власти пришли буржуазные
So
силы.
they eventually the revolt was successful, and bourgeois forces came to power.
И гражданин Дубчик, и Млинарш оказались
citizen
никому не нужны.
Dubček and others have become obsolete, unnecessary. They used them and threw them away.
Старшего взяла
The elder Dubček,
в гости.
So the senior guy was
Или как? На ПМЖ.
moved
Англия.
to England to live in England.
Видимо, он
Why?
был
Because he probably was
очень близок к
very
некоторым
close
кругам
to certain circles in England. Their agent, the professor means.
Англии организации.
Some organizations in England
Поэтому
took him.
он был подослан,
So
конечно,
he was sent, of course,
Михаил Сергеевич
to Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev.
Горбачев. И Михаил Сергеевич считал
He was had been sent with a mission to Gorbachev.
его другом, общался
Gorbachev considered him, this Czechoslovakian guy, his friend,
с ним до того, до 97 года, когда он
was friends with him up to 1997
выношет и сокрушал.
until his death of the Czechoslovakian guy.
Умер его друг.
And Gorbachev was really sad that his friend died.
То есть это два негодяя, два
So these are two bastards, scum, who
руководили
were
на
led
первых порах, может быть, без
by
их понимания.
managed by maybe without them even understanding it, without them realizing it.
И сознание. Так что это вещи, они просто только слова.
So they were guided, directed from by bourgeois secret services, probably. That's what professor means. That's what professor means.
Но за ними есть реальное содержание.
So
Поэтому мы изучаем Виталий.
So again, when we speak about these things, they only seem to be just words or just terms, but they're very, very important.
Но за ними есть реальное содержание.
There's a real actual content. They have actual content. In actuality, in reality, they mean certain things.
Поэтому мы изучаем.
That is why we study them this closely, and we should.
Значит, ну и
So
терминов таких много, это вот
There's lots of
несколько.
terms like that. I just gave you several examples, but really
Их много. И
there's
в
lots of
каждом
them. And
конкретном случае
in
это
each case,
конкретное содержание.
it's in each concrete case the content, the scope of a given concept is concrete, right?
Есть. Но мы
But
с вами, значит,
you and
должны
me
просто научиться и
should
различать.
just
Чем
learn to
отличается
differentiate, simply differentiate what, how
научный
are
социализм от
different,
всех прочих?
how is scientific socialism different from all the other socialisms?
Много их всей,
There's lots of different socialisms,
в том числе новый социализм.
like this new socialism of late.
Но чем плохо новый социализм? Да,
Doesn't
действительно,
sound
поможет.
badly, right? Doesn't sound bad. New socialism, yeah.
Энгельс жили давно уже, вот
Marx and Engels lived a long time ago, they say, right?
сколько там, 200 лет?
200 years ago,
Скоро 200 лет будет этому манифесту коммунистической партии.
Manifest of the Communist Party will turn 200 very soon.
Ленин тоже уже давно
Lenin
жил.
also lived a long time ago. The Soviet, there's no more Soviet Union, right? That's how they,
Так, дорогие товарищи, арифметика
Speaks.
что?
that's what they say. Yeah, but dear comrades, arithmetics. How about arithmetics?
Какая-то новая? Есть
Is it
новая
new?
арифметика.
Is there any new arithmetic?
Диофанту, создателю первого труда арифметика,
Diaphant, the creator of, the antique Greek, probably, creator of the first textbook, arithmetics,
уже 2,5
is like two and a
тысячелетия.
2,500 years old, right?
Арифметикой мы
first
все
textbook.
занимаемся. И вроде
And we still use arithmetics, right?
все так же.
And it's
Действительно,
basically the same.
в своих основах она так же.
Yes, and its foundation, in its basics, yeah, it's the same.
1 плюс 1 будет
1
2.
plus 1 equals 2, right?
Что такое
So he means, how can basics of scientific socialism be outdated, right? This is stupid.
сумма?
Like, for instance, what is sum in arithmetics? What is sum? As in total amount, right? Sum. Like 1 plus 1 equals sum. Is the result of, one of the students says, sum is the result of addition. So when you add 1 to 1, you get the sum of 2.
Это кто сказал? Ну, а говорит, дураком помрешь.
Математик, физик,
So no, I'm a mathematician and a physicist, so I know.
Да. Она тоже знает. Вот на уровне
And she knows
представления она
too.
знает. Почему она знает?
On this basic level.
Я
Why?
уверен. Потому
I'm
что в
sure,
первом
because
классе
in the first grade,
слева от учителя,
on the left from the
значит,
teacher,
противоположно так на стене,
on
висит
the wall that is opposite to the window,
плакатик.
there's a
Один
poster
плюс два
where it
будет
is stated 1 plus
3.
2 equals 3, etc.
Слагаемое, там слагаемое.
So you put together the members, the components, and you get the sum, right?
Как сумма. Сумма – это результат сложения. Но простой вопрос
So
о
it is the
понятии
result of
ставит
addition.
человека в тупик,
You
это я
add.
понимаю. Да это мы знаем.
But when you ask about the concept, a person becomes baffled sometimes.
Но
And
одно
I understand that, and we know that.
дело знать,
But
а другое
knowing
дело
is one
знать
thing.
понятие.
But knowing a concept is another.
Знать
What
понятие,
concept?
ну, как
Knowing what this particular concept is.
в какой-то мере означает
another.
постичь.
So to understand means comprehend.
Вот Гегель обращает внимание в истории философии на стоиков.
So Hegel, for example, for instance, turns our attention to that in his work, The History of Philosophy, turns our attention to the Stoics. So the Stoics were the first to understand that knowing is one thing. I know, because it's written on the poster, right? That socialism is this. And the other thing is to comprehend in concepts.
Да. А процент что такое?
What is percentage? Tell me.
Ну, не надо.
Is a 100th part.
Мы поняли же, с вами разговаривать на эту тему не стоит.
Please don't. We know that we should speak with you.
Не понял.
Промилле.
Percent is per mil. You know, per milli.
Что такое промилле? Понятно. Нет, ну, процент это мы все.
Percent is, we all know what it is. So I'm asking you. That's why I asked, because people know generally what percentage is, but I don't know the definition of the concept. Why is it? What's so important here? The importance of this. The importance of this is that if you even have forgotten how to deal with the percentage, you remember the definition, and then do these what you have to do using the definition. Because you've got it in your mind, in your head. You've already got it. Okay. Since we've started speaking about this, we will continue. What is the square of the sum? Square of sum, what is it? What does it equal to? What is it equal to, he means? Square of sum is equal... he forgot. It is equal to the square of the first number multiplied by the double. So the square of the sum of two expressions is equal to the square of the first plus twice the product of the first and the second plus the square of the second. I'm not sure if I've translated this correctly, so just look at the formula. So it's AB plus B in brackets square equals to A square plus 2AB plus B square. One of the basic definitions in math, right? Well done. Well done. So he actually remembers that. And if he remembers and suddenly, encounters this issue, he remembers this formula, right? And solves a certain goal. And if he doesn't remember, he cannot solve that. Anything of this, or any task of this kind. That is why they require of you, demand in school, knowledge of these things. In math. You must know the definitions, the rules. If you know the definitions, you can solve the tasks, the problems.
Если ты не
an
знаешь,
exercise, right?
ты не можешь.
If you don't know, you cannot solve the
Здесь
exercise,
везде
do
работает
the exercise.
понятие.
Because, why is that? Because, in any case, concepts are at work here.
Там, скажем, вот эту вот
Let's say
штуку
this
с
thing
квадратом
with the
суммы там.
square
Скажем,
of the sum.
люди даже помнят и
People even
нарисуют.
remember and can write, can draw,
Выразить в понятиях не могут.
but cannot express it in concepts, using concepts.
Но это вот хорошо, что хоть рисуют. Значит,
Of course, it is a good thing that they can write it down,
нужно-то эти вещи, конечно, знать. Тем
but
более,
of course you should know these
если
things,
кто-то практически
especially
с
if
этим сталкивается.
someone deals with this in practice, with these things
Значит,
in
понятие
practice. So,
социализм,
the concept of socialism
значит, роль. И
and its role,
почему у нас научный социализм?
we're talking about this. And why is socialism scientific? So, scientific socialism,
Нет, научный коммунизм,
not
как
scientific communism,
было в последние годы Советского Союза.
as they named it, as they called it in the late Soviet Union.
Я вот тут
In the, because there's early Soviet Union and there's late after Khrushchev. In Khrushchev's and Brezhnev's Soviet Union, they called it scientific communism.
в статье написал научный
So why do
коммунизм
we speak about scientific socialism, not scientific communism?
имени
I wrote an
Суслова.
article called Scientific Communism, named after Comrade Suslov.
Это придумка Суслова.
That was invented by Suslov, another revisionist guy.
Коммунизм, он
Because
научный.
communism, it is scientific, right?
Да, научный коммунизм.
Yeah, it
понятно.
is. We understand that.
Правильно.
It is clear. That's correct.
Но теория
But
не
the
научный
theory
социализм.
is not
Не научный
scientific
коммунизм,
communism.
а именно научный социализм.
But
Почему?
it should be called, and it is, scientific socialism, not communism. Why should the theory named scientific socialism, not communism? Because
Социалистическое
socialist
движение – это
motion
древнейшее
is the
такое
most
практическое
ancient
движение человечества.
practical motion
Древнейшее.
of humanity, or movement of society. That's how humanity moves from the most ancient times, or progresses, right?
Некоторые, особенно, скажем, вот КПРФ, они любят
Some people, especially the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, CPRF,
что
they like saying that
христианство,
they say that
Иисус Христос первый
Jesus Christ was the first communist.
коммунист.
And it's funny, really. But also kind of
Значит,
sad.
Ну, конечно, не в том смысле, что
But of course not
Иисус
in a
там
sense
был
that
членом коммунистической
Jesus was a member of the Communist
партии или
Party
проповедовал коммунизм.
and preached, had preached communism.
А в том смысле, что
But in a sense
первые
that
коммунистические общины,
first
первые
communist
христианские общины,
first Christian communities
носили ярко выраженный такой
Were-
коммунальный, коммунный, общинный характер.
they were of this communal character.
Они были действительно общинами.
They were communist in actuality. Actually, were had been communes.
И, скажем, в деяниях апостолов вы
These
можете
Christian entities, and in the book of Acts, a book of the Apostles, or Acts of the Apostles, you can read that
спросить, как организовал один человек пришел вместе с женой в
one
общину,
person and his wife, that was Anania, I remember, one person and his wife came to a commune,
сдал имущество свое,
gave away his everything he had, right?
стал членом общины,
And has become the member of the community,
а потом
Christian
выяснилось,
community.
что
And then
он
it
не
turned
всё
out
сдал-то.
that he didn't give everything.
Ну, чушь ты, Вася.
Left something for himself. So come on,
Не все сдал-то.
why
И
did you
они
do
от
that?
стыда померли ночью.
And him and his wife died of shame in the
Да,
night.
вот поговорка наша, говорит русская. Сгорели от стыда.
That's what Russian proverb says. They burned down from shame, with shame, because of the shame. Burned down. When was
Если
it?
это пишет
Well,
апостол Павел.
it was written by one of the apostles in the first century or so.
Там не
Must be.
дата
There's no date, right? Exact date.
Да. Ну и сегодня религиозные
And
общины,
today,
это, мы
religious
знаем, это
communes,
явление
we know this phenomena.
Другое дело, что
They exist
сейчас
everywhere, right?
эти
But
общины, они
today,
не
of
носят
course,
такого вот
these communes aren't,
экономического коммунистического
do not have this economic communist character.
характера. А просто, скажем, в соборе там есть своя община, она собирается и решает какие-то
It's just a community that when people gather and solve certain church issues.
Но,
So they don't give away all of their stuff, right? But
вот это движение, оно было. Платон,
it existed,
он
this movement, of Christian movement. Or, for instance, Plato,
разъяснил,
he explained that,
источником противоречий
the philosopher, he explained that the source of contradictions
господствующим власти является
in dominating class is private property. In the ruling class, right? Dominant class.
поэтому для некоторых категорий граждан,
So
особенно для
for some certain categories of citizens, especially for warriors,
воинов,
Plato
для
explained.
руководителей,
Plato explained
ее надо убрать.
The leaders, the managers shouldn't have any private property, said Plato.
Ликвидировать, иначе будут разборы.
Otherwise, you will have fights.
Там Диоген,
Or Diogenes
призывал к такой простой
called
жизни. Не
upon
надо человеку
the
ничего
simple life. A person
лишнего.
shouldn't have any excessive things.
Сам
Excessive
жил в
things.
лодке.
And he lived in a barrel.
Из обстановки у него
Had lived in a
только
barrel.
чаша такая большая.
He had owned only one thing, a big cup, right?
Миска глиняная.
Clay cup or a sort of plate, clay bowl he owned.
Потом мальчик приходит к его
And then a
этому
boy
ручейку,
came
водопою.
to the river where Diogenes lived to wash his hands,
Поставил, попил и побежал.
to drink. He just used his hands. The boy just simply used his hands to drink, and then ran away. And Diogenes saw that, and
Ты думаешь, зачем же мне плошка?
why do I need the clay bowl? I can drink using my hands.
Можно из рук пить. И ложки, и
And got
кружки.
rid of the bowl
Ложки
too.
не стал.
And
Средневековье.
so,
Значит, это
or-
уже Каутский.
in Middle Ages,
Каутский написал одну
no, not Middle Ages. Let's speak about Kautsky. He
по
wrote
крайней мере, книжку замечательно.
at least one a very good book, and it was very good.
Замена ей до сих пор нет.
There is no it is unique still. It cannot be replaced by anything else. So Kautsky wrote a book called
История социализма.
The History of Socialism.
Толстенный труд, который я
It's this thick, the book, that I
рекомендую.
recommend for reading for everyone. So that was Kautsky before he became a renegade, and Lenin criticized him for that. So
И вот
I recommend that
в
work by
средние века
Kautsky,
там
and
этих
he says
социалистических
that in Middle Ages
движений
they had lots of socialist movements,
вот же маленькая тележка.
like a bunch of
Всякие
them.
альбегойцы там, табариты,
Albigoans,
катары, и
Tabarids,
еще там кто-то.
Catars, and
Вплоть
some
до
other people.
крестьянской войны
Up to the peasant war
в Германии
in
в
Germany
начале 16 века,
in the early 16th century,
в которой сильно
where
действовало, значит, коммунистическое такое движение
communist
Мюнцерова.
movement, Münzer's movement,
Восстание Мюнцера. Там
uprising
Лютер,
by Münzer. There was Luther, whom you know well, Martin Luther,
реформатор.
the reformer,
И Мюнцер.
and Münzer.
Лютер, он все-таки с князьями заигрывал и
But
делал
Luther dealt with the kings,
реформу в общем интересах богатых.
the princes, with the princes, and he wanted to make the reform in the interests of the rich.
Мюнцер именно в интересах крестьян.
But Münzer tried to make a reform in the interests of the peasants,
За что его и наказали.
and of course he was punished for that.
И это вполне такое социалистическое-коммунистическое движение.
And this is a socialist communist movement.
Но его
It
поддерживали
was. But
Томас Мор,
it was supported by Thomas More,
английский
English Lord
канцлер,
Chancellor,
хранитель печати.
and the keeper of the seal
Второй человек, можно сказать, в
Second
английском
person.
государстве.
in English state.
Теперь этот выдающийся
And this
гуманист, как он,
person, what's his name,
кто написал?
who wrote
Эразм Роттердам.
Erasm of Rotterdam,
Поддерживали. Вы жили в
supported
это
that.
время.
And you
То есть
lived,
сознание вот это вот социалистическое.
and you remember these guys, because you lived in the Soviet Union. So this understanding, this
Оно вот
socialist
в это время
understanding,
начинает очень
comprehension,
мощно расти по мере
starts growing quite powerful, started growing quite powerful in those times, in the Middle Ages.
разложения капиталистического
During the decomposition of the
давления над Европой.
capitalist pressure, that the capitalist pressure on Europe, in Europe, gradually dissipated, and so this communist movement grew from below.
И
And
к английской революции, это в середине уже
the English
17 века,
Revolution, by the time of English Revolution, in the middle of the
к английской революции, это в середине уже 17
in
века,
the middle of the 17th century,
созрело
right?
целое движение.
It was ripe. This movement was big and ripe, and complete.
Английская революция, там пишут, значит,
in English
про Кромвеля,
during
лидера,
English Revolution they write
про
about
разные
Cromwell,
там партии, а про
the leader,
коммунистов молчу. Хотя
Cromwell,
имени там
about different parties, but they don't tell us anything about the communists. But
была довольно сильная
it was
такая
pretty strong. This
струя
this
коммунистов
stream of communist
Веллера.
movement was
И
pretty strong,
они именно
and
создали
they
в
have
армии
created
вот
in
этой
the
вот
army
революционной,
exactly these communists have created
значит, такой корпус
within a revolutionary army this sort of core of
так и
agitators.
назывался. Оттуда
That's it was named that core of agitators.
идет слово агитация.
That's where we derive the word agito, agitation.
Вот. Агитаторы в армии, и они, значит,
So agitators in the army propaganda
такой,
that the king is bad and
а нужно делать
we
вот
should
так,
do
вот
this
так.
and that.
И
That's
с
what they
того
did.
времени агитация, слово, видите, прижилось.
And so we use the word agitation since. Agitation, it's in Russian, agitaция, so it's meaning campaign against something or someone, right? That's what Marx and Engels spoke about, and Lenin. So propaganda and agitation.
У нас еще и активно используется.
We still use that.
В революции
In French
французской в
Revolution,
18 веке уже
in 18th century,
заметное было коммунистическое движение Бабе.
the communist movement was pretty prominent. Babeuf, we could already noticed it very well. A guy named Babev led it.
Так и называется заговор Бабева. Вполне
It was called the Babev Conspiracy.
То
It's
есть
quite communist.
он вполне коммунистический. То есть
It was like totally, completely communist. Right?
в буржуазных
So in bourgeois
революциях
revolutions,
возникает вот это уже не социалистическое даже движение, а коммунистическое.
the movement is not just socialist, but communist.
Более последовательное, наиболее революционное,
Is the most-
готовое действие.
It's the most coherent and revolutionary movement, and ready to act.
Серьезно, не
Was ready to act
разговорами,
seriously in actuality, not by just saying things,
не проповедью заниматься,
not
как
by
Томас Мор или
preaching stuff
там
like Thomas More
французские
did,
аббаты в середине
or
18
French
века. Значит, уже
French abbots did in the middle of the 16th century, but you know, serious stuff,
политический.
serious political stuff.
И возникла вот эта
And
разница.
This
Поэтому,
difference appeared between
когда встал вопрос в середине 19
communism and socialism. So when a question arose in the middle of the
теперь уже
19th century,
во время вот
this
этих
issue,
буржуазных
during these bourgeois
революций
revolutions
середины 19
of the middle of the 19th century,
1848
of 1848,
1849
1849.
они прошли эти революции в нескольких странах.
we had these bourgeois revolutions in several countries.
И к Марксу
And
с Энгельсом
to
обратились
Marx and Engels,
товарищи коммунисты, что вот
comrade
надо
communists turned to them, to Marx and Engels, and said that we need a program
революции.
for the
Они
revolution.
сели
So they sat down and wrote the Manifest of Communist Party. Okay. So I'll stop here because I need to take a break, and we'll continue in the next part. Bye for now.